We have Yakima County Commission candidate Brent Knautz, and he is the managing partner of business consulting firm Enigma Marketing, and he wants to be the next Yakima County Commissioner. And good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us who is Brent Knautz? Knautz being a German name.
Yes, and I'm glad we rehearsed that prior to going on air.
We did.
I knew that you were going to destroy it.
No, I wouldn't.
He's listened before.
I would have asked you. Yeah, he's listened
He's
before.
clearly a listener.
He's listened before.
That's
Well, tell us about it, Brent. Tell us about who you are.
I was born in Tacoma, and we moved to the Yakima Valley when I was 6 years old. My dad has been in the funeral business ever since I was born. So we moved to the Yakima Valley. He got a job here. I grew up in Sela, graduated from Sela High School.
Go Vikings.
Exactly, go Vikings. I live in East Valley right now. I'm married. I have 2 kids. My wife is a 4th grade teacher out there at East Valley Elementary School. So, but back to graduating from high school, as a teenager, I think growing up in this environment, Sela was all I ever knew. I wanted to get out of this valley and go make it big, and I had big aspirations and dreams to go to the big city and just make piles of money, or all of those things I think that teenagers think that they can do. So I went to the University of Washington is where I started out my education, and I joined a fraternity. And all these fraternity guys when I first showed up, were asking me where I was from, and I said, well, I'm from the east side. And they're like, oh, you're from Issaquah.
Yeah, Issaquah or Bellevue, right?
Yeah.
They don't recognize anything past Preston.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So, and I would always get razzed, and they said, oh, man, yeah, I've been to Yakima once. We were at a baseball tournament there. Oh, my gosh. I said, well, did you guys win? Well, no, we didn't win. Well, there you go. We have better teams over here.
That's right.
So, after school, after college, actually, I did get that big job. I worked for a large consulting firm. It was a business development and marketing firm over in Seattle. I lived in Linwood because I couldn't afford to live in the Seattle area.
Sure.
So I commuted from Linwood to downtown Seattle. And I worked at this group, large corporate brands. I had a really good time. I actually did enjoy the work. But I think that the life that you live over there, it's really a different lifestyle. And
much of it in your car, unfortunately, right?
You're right. When it rains, that is probably an hour and 45 minutes to get from Linwood to downtown. And when it's not raining, it's an hour and a half. When it's non-traffic time, maybe going at home at about 7 p.m., it's 15 minutes. So, yeah, you spend a lot of your life in that car over there. And I think that most of those people live for the days when it's sunny and the weekends, and they can go out and have a good time, because it really is a beautiful place in the sunshine. I really do like to go over there for baseball games, football games, soccer games. It's a lot of fun. But I think that routine that you get into and being a part of that process got really old. And so I wanted to come back. I wanted to raise a family. So I came back to the Yakima Valley because, what's really funny is that when you're young and you go over there thinking that you're going to do all these big and great things, I really had it good back here, and I didn't even know it until, years later.
Sure.
So I came back to the Yakima Valley, and I was trained and educated to do something that we really didn't have an industry for here. So I had a couple choices. I could go to work for my father in the funeral industry, which I think most children, that's kind of an interesting deal when they work with their parent. One of the best things, though, that I ever learned from my dad was his work ethic. And, I used to work for him as a teenager growing up, and I used to, clean cars and stuff like that. I remember one day he came out and was looking at one of the vehicles that I cleaned, and he got down on his shoulder, down on the ground, and looked up into the wheel well. And he said, look, there's dirt under here. And I said, Dad, and I'm like 16 years old. I said, Dad, only like a baby in a stroller is going to see that. And so, he kind of stopped, started to get a little red-faced. And I don't even know if he even remembers this, but this is something that I remember, and I've always remembered this. But he said to me, he goes, you know what? People work hard. They pay money, good money for this stuff, and we're going to give them our best. That's what you need to do right now.
Right on. And
I think rather than firing me, which he very well could have done, I think if he did that, he would have realized that he would have to start paying for some of my stuff. So we tried to avoid that. So he kept me there, and I ended up doing it. I didn't realize what that message meant at the time, that some of that information that he gave. He's still a mentor to me at this, even to this day. And he's still, and he just retired from the funeral business, just sold Brookside Funeral Home to one of his staff. But that message actually started to resonate as I started to form my own business, because when I came back to the Valley, again, I could have worked for my dad, but I was trained and educated to do something completely different. And so I had to start my own business. Because I didn't want to throw away the education and all the effort that I made there.
Sure.
So I had to start my own. And so I do have a business partner. He's actually my best friend. We've been business partners for 20 years. And so I've been doing this in the Valley for 20 years, and we specialize in strategic planning and marketing for all kinds of organizations, agricultural business, agribusiness, all the way to manufacturing, retail. We've kind of run the gamut on various different businesses that we've interjected with.
And is it your history in analyzing individual businesses and seeing strengths, weaknesses, needs, approaches that you think will do you the most good as you transfer that across to maybe county government? Is that?
Yes, and I think that is the experience that I'm bringing to the table. One of the things that we do is the strategic planning process is, people entrust us with their livelihood, with their future, as an organization. And again, going back to, they pay good money. It's hard-earned money, and I have to give them my best. Failure is not an option here. And so part of that process and what we do in any organization is you have to do an extensive amount of research first before you do any program or any kind of strategic plan, because what they'll do is, most organizations that we meet with, we sit down and we have a big conversation about what are your goals and what are your objectives and where you're trying to go. So what that research does is it really helps us establish a baseline point of where are you at now, where do you want to go, and we have to measure that gap in between, because that gap actually might be larger than what you have the resources for.
That'll be the work product, closing that gap. And so, yeah.
And so if that gap is too big, then you actually have to make an adjustment. You have to start making it in stages. So you have to go from A to B, B to C, C to D.
Have you done some of that for the county? As a person who...
I have not done any of those things for the county, but I've done them for state organizations. Being in agriculture, I still work with all three branches of the grain industry, the wheat industry, the Grain Commission, Association of Wheat Growers, and the Wheat Foundation, and implement those strategies with that whole industry altogether. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing that in that capacity, but not on a county level.
But that would be your approach if you got elected. Then is that kind of how you would?
That would be my approach. I am not a politician, and I'll be the first to admit that I am not a politician. I'm a businessman, and I look at everything through a business lens. And all the decisions that I make are business decisions. The three commissioners that you have right now come from the private sector. And so I was, and that's kind of how I got into this whole deal. Was last fall, I was actually contacted by one of them saying, "Look, you need to run for this position, because Rand's not going to run, and we need to have really good business people in these positions who know and understand how a business works." And that's what the county is. The county is a business. And so, coming at this aspect from a business perspective, somebody who's been, and I have a comprehensive background in business, because I work with, it's not just like I came to the table, from one industry and I only worked on my one business. My business works with other businesses. And so I truly do understand the needs of small business, large business, and some of the obstacles and barriers that they face. So that is what I'm bringing to the table, I think, as county commissioner, to look at it from a business perspective and make some of those tough business decisions that these guys have already been making. The county is in a pretty good position right now, as we all know from what other candidates have been saying, and you'll even hear from the county commissioners. They feel pretty comfortable about where they sit right now, and I agree with that. But, one of the things that we're talking about, there's issues currently that are existing, but there's issues that are going to come down the pipeline that we don't even know what they are yet, because they don't exist. And you're going to need somebody with the experience of problem solving and business development to really help assist with the other two commissioners to make those choices.
Well, you're convincing me. I mean, that makes an awful lot of sense. So a person that has the capacity, knows the techniques and the procedures with which to test, measure, assess, formulate, plan, and then implement. I mean, that's really that's the key to success. If you ask the right questions and you get the right data, then you can move forward on that. I guess if you get the wrong questions, you don't get the questions you need answered, you might head off in the wrong direction.
And that happens a lot.
But that's where your skill set theoretically would put you in a pretty good stead. As you draw on just that kind of background and you look at where the commission is now, I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's kind of like you kind of like what's going on and where they're at. But you think that moving forward, you could help that and build and grow on that. You're not looking at the commission because there's a big holes that have to be filled or new things that have to be done right away. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement. I think that, no candidate's going to go in there and just tear things up and turn the tables over and just, make a big game change, because there's still 2 other commissioners that are part of the process. And they're smart individuals as well, and so you got to work together and collaborate on those things. Where I kind of come into I think as far as my contribution to this whole deal is, there's just like there is in business, you would see this in the county, is there's just a lot of little things that can be addressed. How do we create more efficiencies in this capacity or that capacity in this section or that section? How do we work with other key stakeholders and other groups, and what are the needs that they have, and what are the barriers that they are facing?
Mm-hmm.
And how does the county provide resources and support to help them be better at what they do? Because the county is not going to build and create jobs. That's not what it's designed to do.
Right.
It's to provide support to those individuals who are trying to make those efforts on their own. So, but by understanding the needs that these organizations have, and working with the other commissioners to be able to remove some of those barriers that they have. And there is barriers,
sure.
and there are ways that we can prove. By saying that we're doing a pretty good job doesn't mean we can't improve. We certainly can, and I think we should. But coming in and analyzing some of the removing the barriers that do exist, I think that's where I'll be able to contribute most effectively.
And I think that's one of the big complaints that we hear is, streamlining some processes on permitting and different things like that. Those are the kinds of things that I think the community has spoken to. So,
and that, you're right, and that is a big issue. When it comes to streamlining that process, we can move to an electronic process. They do it in other counties. Just so happens a division of our businesses in software development. So I fully understand that capacity to implement something electronically. Computers is something that I've always actually had an affinity for, and I've done that for 20 years. And actually, I head the engineering section software in our area. So. I can completely facilitate that process. Not that I would do the work, but I understand that process and how to implement something so it can be done electronically.
You present an interesting, not contradiction, option is the word. We just heard from a candidate who's mayor and working in government now and doing it, and talks about knowing processes and everything that will translate straight across. You, on the other hand, represent somebody whose successful business has been to make other businesses successful, and through the research and understanding and then marketing and application of things to maximize and help it go ahead. Both offer tremendous opportunity and potential for a county with a mindset that we need to run like a business, and I think that's kind of what we have, and certainly you would add to that. So it makes for a very interesting choice for the voters. And here's your chance. We got a couple minutes to go. Make your pitch. Tell people why Brent Knautz is the guy that deserves their vote for the primary to move on to the general election.
Well, I'll end with these last words, and also I think exit the elevator pitch with a question as we exit the elevator. So, again, I'm not a politician. I'm a business person, and I look at everything through a business perspective. And again, my background has been in comprehensive business aspects in the private sector, and that's what I want to bring to the table. I think that the question that I want to leave everybody is what do you think? This is really an open position for a senior level management position, because the county commissioners oversee all aspects of the county operations, and so it's a senior level management position. My whole career has been devoted to management and working with other organizations to be able to create those success stories. So as voters, as they look to an individual, do you want somebody who has the qualifications as they look for a business perspective to create a nice, healthy organization. Because I don't believe that having a previous political career is a prerequisite at all. And we can prove that by the current commissioners. All of them come from the private sector. So the question that I pose is, if we're interviewing for a person to fill a senior level management position, what does that candidate look like? And so, if you think that's me, I would ask for your vote.
Fair question. Brent Knautz, appreciate your time. Thanks for being willing to step up and serve your fellow Yakima County residents. Get through the primary, and there's plenty of you. We'll have you back and spend some more time in detail and explore maybe some of the interesting approaches that you might take to looking at problems based on business work that you've done in the past. So best of good luck to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate you having me.
You bet.